Starting. There we go. Okay, all right. So now we're live. Where are the notes? Shit. Um, I lost the notes, you guys. Okay, all right. So present. When we do the little mini stand-up for everybody that's here, so we start with Ben.
Hey, am I audible?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. This is the stand-up. I have been reviewing pull requests. I fixed a couple of bugs. I've been doing some performance improvements. Really just the same old, same old. So yeah, I'll be happy to hand over to Bert.
Who has, oh, that was my Outlook, who has done only talking, and just this afternoon I started digging into the Windows test failures, mostly the child process test failures, and I don't know what's up there yet. I was hoping that fix that Alexis did for libuv would fix them, but indeed, as Rod said, it didn't work, and I have no idea what's up. But no coding on my end, unfortunately. The next person would be Chris.
Hey, I've been doing reviewing PR's issues. Had onboarding last week. Onboarded Julian, Christian Tellis, Brian White, Robert, and Ben, and that went well. I think most everybody's merged in now. Did a little bit of spiking out some code to do core module discovery in use in NPM packages, and I'm pretty excited about that. But other than that, kind of the usual. Dominic?
Yeah, not too much on io.js. I've started looking into VM bugs, but didn't get anywhere. The only really related thing I've made progress on is I'm spending a lot of time making WebWG streams efficient for binary data using input from Fedora and Birch, just so that we make sure that they're at least good as node streams in that sense, or probably better.
So what is the half-term score on, will it be async read or non-blocking read?
That's basically the remaining issue. Is like there's some unintuitive aspects about async read, but in the end, it's we've gotten it down to like it's isomorphic. Either you feed in the buffer and then you read synchronously, or you just feed in the buffer and read all in one async step. I'll get back to you in a few days.
Okay.
This is my turn right now. So basically, I was fixing bugs, reviewing some pull requests and stuff like that. Nothing really new or interesting. Yeah, that's it. So next is Isaac, I think.
Yeah, either me or Michael. But so I all of the coding that I've been doing lately has been recreational. Rewriting node tap to make it better. And there were two node issues. I actually have noticed more and more as we've been like kind of more front end people have been coming into Node and starting to use NPM for their front end stuff. I'm seeing like basically every blog post talking about how to do stuff with NPM like has to explain that you don't use the word window, we call it global here, and suggested that we add an alias for that, and like 11 people were like, "No, you're stupid." So anyway, that was fun.
So I can try and push harder to get global into ECMAScript in general, but we talked about it.
Bert, I will never get rid of. Okay, so just to like clarify as far as this goes, I think getting a global as an alias for window in ES would be, yeah, that would be awesome. But there's still like this. If you take all of the node code that's ever been written, which is all of the node code that's written in the last like 3 years, because anything before that is no longer runnable. It is a trifle in comparison to the like mountains, just mountain ranges of like copy pasta JavaScript from like jQuery and stuff, and it all just hangs stuff on the window object, and like I don't know. It just would be a lot easier if we didn't have to explain that bit.
My only concern is that it might fuck with Browserify a little bit.
Browserify does just var global equals window. Like, I don't think it would fuck with Browserify at all.
Well, in general, things that try and detect which environment you're in by like looking for a window variable.
Right, right. So that's an empirical question, right? We can go figure out how many node things are doing that. In fact, Chris, that was a big part of why I got excited when you were talking about like writing a program that does like static analysis of all of the npm packages. Like that's a kind of question we could be asking, and yeah, let's go figure that out. And because it'd be great in that issue to be like, well, there's 7 modules that do that, and none of them are in use, so screw it, you know. The other node related issue that I've been bumping into. So before I get off the npm in the browser stuff, Bert, we're never going to get rid of the hard coded node modules ever. What probably will happen, and I think what's actually the better solution there to the actual underlying problem, is for us to have a build step that flattens your dependency tree and makes it browser friendly, meaning it puts it in a folder of your choice and stuff. But npm still needs a deterministic place to know like what dependencies you have and kind of like how to read that whole tree. And like it doesn't make sense to put that in a different folder because now we have to figure out, and if you change it, it gets really confusing. Like, yeah.
We should talk, maybe take it private.
Yeah.
But it's not really appropriate on this call. But I have some things to say about it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to chat about it more. But I think the path forward is really to just like flatten it into a folder of your choice rather than start using a different named folder. Like node modules is what it is. It's not changing.
Well, the thing is, I was trying to use npm for C, or at least come up with some idea. This was also what who was it? Substack suggested this to me. I think 2 years ago, and at the time I thought it was ridiculous. But there are some ways I can imagine it to be really useful. But the only thing is, of course, packages, or if you imagine them for C, they work a little bit differently, and it's really a put off for people to use a folder named node modules. But we should probably take that private and not do it on this meeting and bore everyone else with it.
It's a put off. It's a put off, and it becomes a scapegoat when it's not addressing your needs. But like, you forget that nobody in Node liked the name node modules. That was just like Ryan was just like BDFL privileges was up and called it node modules, and then that was that. The reason why we eventually got over that objection, that aesthetic objection, is because it actually satisfied our needs, right? So you don't actually have to look in it. You can kind of just like, whatever, that's just some programmatically managed thing. But when you're doing browser stuff, it's like you have to actually dig into it. You have to type node modules into your code. So it becomes more crappy. Anyway, the other issue that I have bumped into and I don't have a good test for yet is just there's some issue with TLS in both io.js and 0.12. So I think it's from the new version of OpenSSL, I would assume. We're finding some issues where like a long streaming connection to CouchDB over Pound, and it seems to be somewhat related to Pound because when we go through Proxy, it's fine. Causes the Node client to just like completely bork. So Fedora, I'll have a good test that you'll probably be very excited to look at.
Sure.
Sometime in the next couple days, but we're still working on tracking that down exactly.
Okay, sounds great.
That is the main blocker right now, preventing npm from rolling out io.js everywhere. And that's it for me. Next up is io.js or Rod.
That's that's I think I'm next. This is Michael. So I've been like on that reconciliation proposal that has like 1 million comments. So I've been keeping that together and updating it as needed. And the evangelism working group has kind of blown up, both in the amount of stuff that they're taking on and people that are like working on stuff. So I've been just really trying to keep up with them and make sure that like pave all the cow paths and all that. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, and then a ton of NodeConf work. There's been a lot of NodeConf stuff lately, but that's it. Rod. I can't hear you, Rod. Even though you came off. Huh, why can't I hear Rod? Rod, I can't hear you at all for some reason.
I can't hear Rod either.
Yeah. Even when your mic comes off, we can't hear you.
Rod, try restarting your browser. I wish that was a joke, but if you're using Chrome, restarting Chrome sometimes. Hey,
yes, now I can hear you. Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, headset. I was on speaker before. So I've just been doing lots of work stuff, but cutting new releases as well. Very concerned about these Windows bugs. If you haven't been following that, there's an issue 10 something or other. We've got Windows bugs to close. So the summary of that is that we discovered that our Jenkins setup wasn't fully testing Windows for a long while, in fact. So there's been a bunch of things that have slipped by without us noticing, and we're catching up. So 1.4, the patch releases so far have been about fixing some of those minor things, but there's still 9 or 10 failures that need addressing. Looks like there might be 1 or 2 common problems underlying those, but we need Windows resources to help fix them. BERT only spreads so thin, so we've got to get them sorted out as soon as possible. The other thing is on the top of my head, but I can't get it out. So there was something else I was going to mention, but I've forgotten now. So let's just move on. Oh, ARM. So ARM v8. We got hooked up with the Linaro ARM cluster, which is the open ARM on Linux thing that ARM sort of spun off. So they have a cluster of ARM v8 machines for people building products and doing open source stuff, and they prioritized us to have access, and so we now have an ARM v8 machine on the CI cluster. I'm not sure how permanent that will be in that form, but I'd like to make it a permanent fixture. And we've had a bunch of people, including Ben, pile in to add support for that. One blocker for ARM v8 support is, for full support, is OpenSSL 1.0.2 there is an upgrade in process in a couple of pull requests that we should get in, and then that'll be pretty exciting. So that's ARM 64-bit version 8. So that's very cool. That's all from me for now. So over to Trevor.
We finished up the Nexttick processor performance update, got that merged in. But for index of, I think is mostly done. Just want a final review from someone. But it has a huge number of tests, so I'm confident it's working correctly. And other than that, just looking at other issues and miscellaneous items.
Cool. Okay, we can basically move on now. I did want to note real quick that Colin's not here because Colin wants to write code and not be in meetings. So he resigned from the TC basically. We've done a really good job of getting most of like the actual work and like day-to-day stuff out of the TC. So I think he just wants more time to write code and not be in these meetings. So that's why Colin's not here. Okay. So, quick review of last meeting. We covered this is-object behavior. I don't know where that's landed, though, because it requires a major version bump, so I don't think that we actually resolved that. Translate installers. What is the status of that, Rod? Rod?
Sorry, I'm here. I'm just unplugging and plugging in headset. But I can answer both of those things actually. So the is-object thing was the resolution was to push that to a milestone and possibly land it in another branch. But Chris is on top of that. But I think the resolution for minor version bump things is we need to make a milestone and add everything to that milestone, and then we'll look at that and then assess the timing of that. The installers, so the complexity of the Windows installer is kind of large for the internationalization. So to do internationalized installer there, we have to add extra stuff to the build machine setup, and it also adds overhead if anyone wants to build the installer themselves on their own machine. I'm concerned about the technical overhead there. There may be ways to improve that, but we need to investigate that. So I'm not happy to land that Windows internationalization. The OS X one is a lot easier, and Zach has done some good work there, but I just haven't had time to sync up on that, and it's like a large block of work that I just need some time to sit down with and figure out, and then that will likely land first. So they're work in progress still.
Okay, next up is this fixed process.send sync IO regression that Ben did. Anything?
Yeah, so
That's back on the agenda, by the way. So we have an agenda item for that. So we can discuss because Ben didn't make it last time, so we punted to this meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we just cover it now then? We're already getting into it. Ben, go.
Okay, so I wrote a patch, but Bert pointed out that it probably won't work right on Windows for reasons that weren't entirely clear to me. I noticed that Orange Mocha, Alexis, did some work in libuv on, what was it, asynchronous writes to pipes. Bert, maybe you can comment on if that addresses the issue that you mentioned.
I mean, we only know if the test's fast, but I think it may address the issue. The other thing, though, so we basically reverted to having blocking process.send on Unix because we considered it an API change. The strange thing, however, is that on Windows, process.send has always been asynchronous. So if we now change that to be synchronous, it is also an API change. I think it also underlines that there is something terribly broken about this whole message bus. But that aside, like the question is, how do we want to continue here? Do we keep it non-blocking on Windows, or do we also want to bring Windows in line in a stable branch, basically?
Or do we want to keep Unix non-blocking? That is.
I mean, that to be honest, in the long term, that would be my preference. The only thing is that process.send right now does not support back pressure, so there's no draining event. It doesn't return, as far as I know, a value to indicate whether you are supposed to write more. And so I don't think we really have the option of like actually fixing the problem in the right way right now. That would be a 2.0 a version 2.0 solution anyway.
2.0, or could that just be a minor bump? I mean, process.send would have to take a callback. It would have to have like you said, a drain event. Am I forgetting anything?
Well, I mean, like my we could do that, of course. Yes. Like adding.
So can I just get some clarity? So it's async on Windows, but there's no callback?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just fire and forget, basically.
So I feel like the urgent thing is that it should probably be aligned so that both platforms behave the same, and whether that be async with no callback on both or sync on both, that'd be nice. And longer term, yeah, I don't know. You guys seem to be discussing what's best there.
Async with no callback is terrible. Like it's strictly superior to have them be different, but at least one of them be non-terrible. Then I mean, having this behavior on Windows is worse than having different behavior. I mean, the ideal, I think we can all agree, is that they behave the same and also behave well.
I think people may misunderstand the problem a little bit, though. Even if we make it synchronous on Unix, it is still a little bit asynchronous because there's a pipe buffer in between the two, kernel pipe buffer in between the two processes. So you can asynchronously write a couple packets, but at some point the kernel buffer will fill up and process.send will become blocking. Basically, it will block until the other process, the child process, for example, reads some data from the pipe. On Windows, basically you can imagine right now the pipe buffer is infinite. You can, until memory fills up, basically. And that is the only semantic difference right now that we have. And yes, Rob, this is the core IPC module. I think in the long term, ideally, we would just make it a stream just like every other, like a slightly magical stream that can somehow transport file descriptors. But other than that, you just want it to have the same interface.
Yes, I was just going to suggest exactly that. Like we have a standard for putting data into a thing that comes out somewhere else. Like that is exactly a stream, and I think it's just kind of like we never really, like when we did that big stream refactor way back when, we never really like thought through exactly how IPC kind of fit into that model. But my sense is that this is definitely a 2.0 problem. Like,
should we open up a 2.0 bug to make the core IPC interface a stream?
Yes, I guess.
But is it a breaking change or is it an additive change?
no, well, even if it's an additive change, I mean, there's a little bit of a judgment call here. I think it's a significant enough additive change that we probably do want it to still be a major version bump. I mean,
like one of the solutions that you can think of is, we add this, I don't know, process.channel object, for example, and then we still support process.send, the old the old style thing, and it just delegates to the stream write, basically. That works, but the thing is that we currently do not have support. We don't have a defined stream interface for streams that also support sending over a file descriptor. So I think we would have to do that first, and after that, I would think it is actually a fairly trivial modification.
And I'm sure the streams team would be happy to get involved as well, the streams working group.
yep, Bike Shed,
Yeah.
move on.
Okay, let's just add an issue about like making it a stream interface, and then cover this stuff there, and then wherever it lands, we'll see if it's major or minor.
But I think Ben is currently blocked on doing some bug fix here. So what do we do in the short term? I would say, like, revert Unix behavior to what it was, and try to not touch Windows behavior. Although I wouldn't cry if you brought in line with Unix. I think very few people use cluster there anyway. So.
Okay.
My current patch makes it blocking on Windows. So either I would have to I would have to add a lot of if process.platform is Windows, or we would have to document that the behavior changes on Windows.
Wait, Ben, you're saying that you can make it synchronous on Windows?
Yeah, so I wrote a patch, but the patch makes Windows synchronous instead of asynchronous as it.
Now, this might be absolutely insane, but what if we just throw it to a spawn thread? That way we could know when it's done and still get the callback, basically emulate it.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
What was it?
This is exactly what we should be pushing out to GitHub. Let's discuss it there. I mean,
Sure, I agree.
I don't think it's really a decision that we need to make here.
Okay. Let's move on.
I know that Fyodor is short on time. Fyodor, are there any issues that you specifically want to get to before you get a run?
Well, nothing from the TC agenda and nothing on my plate. So, I would probably discuss V8 upgrade, if anything, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the V8 upgrade. Go, Fyodor.
It was suggested by Ben, so probably Ben could start the conversation.
Oh, right, yeah, actually it was more of a conversation starter than a serious proposal. Okay, I believe that V8 4.1 has gone gold, so it's gone stable, which presumably means we should upgrade and drop the. So I backed out. What was it? 4.1.16, I believe. Much to the chagrin of Dominic, I believe. So I suggest that we upgrade V8 to 4.1 without floating any patches on top. And then there's the issue of 4.2, but that's more a discussion about whether and how we want to do a io.js-next.
I think that so we have an item on the agenda here about landing something for the next major version bump, and then we already had one issue come up earlier that Chris was going to talk about. So I think that Chris is going to start a thread about where we land stuff for the next major version, and if we want to produce nightlies of next, that would be the next V8 as well as whatever these other next patches are, so that people can test them. So we can probably move the 4.2 discussion to that. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about moving to 4.1 on the stable current line?
I think it's I think it'd be good to get some clarity, maybe written down somewhere. What we do with major version bumps or minor version bumps when the ABI changes versus the API. I know we already have a policy that if we compass the API with NAN, then it's minor, but I'm not so sure about the ABI.
Okay.
I've seen a plan somewhere, I thought, which was like upgrade V8 when it becomes stable.
Yeah, that's the plan. But when we bump to 4.1, are we concerned about anything breaking? I think. Like, are we concerned with ecosystem breakage or anything?
Yeah, we're already shipping 4.1. Only the last patch level upgrade was 4.1 minus one change, because that one change changed the ABI. So the ABI, not the API. So what I'm proposing is that we revert the revert, so that we're basically at 4.1 as shipped in Chrome. The only thing is, then we will have to bump the minor in io.js, because it's going to be an ABI change.
I consider that not a big deal. Bumping the minor is okay.
No, yeah, but everyone needs to recompile their add-ons, so it's kind of inconvenient. Not a really big deal for most, probably, but...
Does the new one still work with the latest version of NAN, or do we need another version of NAN to go out?
I don't think NAN actually uses that particular part of the V8 API.
So which part are we talking about, just for reference?
It has to do with interceptors.
Okay, I see, yeah.
Yeah, if you want, I can go into great detail, but hey, you're already short on time, so I'll lay off.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just think that ABI change is probably a reason for more for a major bumps than for minor, because like minor bump should not really break the add-ons. Or what do we currently think about it? So are add-ons breaking add-ons considered a minor thing or a major?
So the policy actually is that if NAN can basically handle the change between the two APIs, then we don't. Between the two APIs, we don't care. We just bump the minor. But if it can't, if it falls outside of what NAN is handling, then we have to bump the major.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Because it's an ABI change, we'll have to bump node module version, which means that everyone has to recompile their add-ons, and it doesn't matter if they use NAN or not, if they use it or not.
Yeah. So basically, everyone will need to run npm rebuild in every folder.
Right. So I think the question is, do we consider this a breakage, causing people to run npm rebuild? I'm not sure.
Well, it will cause people to call npm rebuild anyway, so there's no way.
If we go strictly by the statement of whether NAN can handle it or not, NAN can't handle ABI changes, so I would lean towards major, just because that's sort of our policy, and just the expectation of users not to have to rebuild all their submodules, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the next question that I have is, why do we exactly want to be on the same page with a Chrome stable here?
Bug
Yeah, I
fixes.
mean, okay. So there are bug fixes on top of just this, because I thought that you were saying that the only change was the thing that broke this API, nothing else.
Yeah, that's true. So we're already at 4.1 minus an ABI change, but now 4.1 is stable. Ideally, we'd be using an unchanged and unpatched version of V8. Yeah, that's basically
But
all there is to it. And the reason
So,
we're on
so
4.
so
Sorry.
but can we just continue to float this patch so that we don't have to break everybody and take a
So
major
we're
version
signing up
bump?
for a lot of pain if that's our policy. If our goal is, don't accept additive changes to the V8 API because they'll change the ABI and people have to recompile, then we're not going to get V8 upgrades very often, or we're going to be continually floating a lot of patches all the time.
Well, no, Dominic. Like we're in a weird situation right now because we took it before it landed
No,
in
but I'm
version
saying
stable, right?
even within 4.1, right? Like they might change, they might add to the API. I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe that
Well,
goes into maintenance mode now.
This has to do with the fundamental difference in how versioning is used between V8 and io.js, right? V8, they just throw out whatever, whenever, as it comes. We're trying to maintain some semblance of stability in a minor version, right?
Yes.
So those two fundamentally are incompatible.
right.
The thing is, like,
We've been
it
tracking
depends
it
on
before
whose
it was
perspective
stable.
you're taking, right? Like from most users' perspective, JavaScript doesn't change at all, so V8 never forces a major version bump. From native module perspective, if the API changes, then their native modules will actually just break. So that's like definitely a major version bump.
Yeah, but since V8 is essentially an embedders API,
But then we have this intermediate thing, right, where it's like, okay, your module isn't broken, but consumers of it need to recompile. That's what's I'm not as clear on.
So wait, so how is it actually? Does it actually happen very often where after a V8 line goes into a stable Chrome that it breaks ABI like consistently? Does that actually happen super often?
I should ask about that. My intuition would be probably not, but let me look up. Yeah, or actually, yeah, Ben and you guys probably just know because you've seen it.
Yeah.
I think we should have probably a call with Daniel from the team. So I will arrange an email with him and probably you, Ben. So if anyone else wants to participate in this call, please let me know. So I just won't spam everyone with this. So basically, my understanding, so just to express my position, so the major API bump in either V8 or Node or io.js should happen when the existing stuff cannot be run with that version. So yeah, I think that we must try to find some compromise position between the V8 and io.js to keep the things as stable as possible without breaking and making a major bumps for the patch versions of V8.
Right. So I think like because the policy going forward is that we won't ship until it lands in a stable Chrome, we're only stuck if we decide to continue floating this patch and not break ABI right now, we're basically saying that until we decide to take a 4.2, we don't have to take a major version bump. And when we take 4.2, if we can work with the V8 team to get some assurances that after it lands in stable they won't break ABI, then we won't have this problem again, right?
And another suggestions that I have. So basically, at Voxer, what I did for them is I have upgraded the V8 in the Node 0.8, so that they would get some, V8 security fixes and stuff like that. And the thing that I did is that I have emulated the API and the API of the older V8 on this. So I wonder if this could be possible in io.js with just a smaller floating patch. What do you think, Ben?
Sorry, what is your question, Fedor?
The question is, could we just, compensate that ABI change without reverting the actual patch?
So the problem is that the ABI change is a particular struct that becomes slightly larger. I am 99% sure that nothing out there actually uses that particular part of the API, but in the unlikely circumstance that something does, that will of course break horribly.
Okay, yeah, I got it. I see it in the patch now. Yeah, this is totally creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the plan is to live with this reversion in our current line, and then, and work with the V8 team to make sure that, the next time that we take the next stable release, we won't have ABI breaks, right?
And I think that, so I'm still in favor of unreverting, just so we can actually be on what's in stable Chrome, but we'll just push this unreverting into the growing bucket of major version bumps issues, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we decide to take another major version bump for other reasons before we take 4.2, yeah, there's no reason not to take this as well, right?
Right, and we got like 5 of those issues right now. Chris is gonna write it up, so I think we should probably end up doing that soon.
They're all relatively small, to be honest, though. I mean,
yeah, but we've been over this. I think it's a good idea to show that you can confidently upgrade from 1.x to 2.0 because look at this small changelog instead of like dumping people with a giant changelog full of things they have to comb through.
Good point. I don't know. That's another conversation. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think that we can move on now and try to finish up the agenda from last week. So, just to finish out the review really fast, we actually landed the implement unhandled rejection tracking, which was actually very popular. A lot of people talked about that on Twitter. We talked about the logo brand treatment stuff, which has been getting rolled out. The social media stuff all is getting updated right now. We're getting more assets. So this month we'll see a lot of the new kind of design stuff roll out. Stability policy statement and roadmap got merged, so that's all done. So now we are on to the actual agenda for fucking today. So we already covered the sync.io regression issue in Send. io.js introduced internal modules. Chris Dickinson, go.
Okay, so this is a PR to basically does what it says on the tin. It lets us have modules that can't be required from outside of core. It got a little sidetracked into a conversation about being able to require into other modules, which spilled over into the next generation chat. But it's up for the TC because I personally am in favor of adding this functionality. I think it's a nice insurance policy, since, especially in light of the stability policy going out and saying that we are going to do our level best not to make any breaking changes to the JavaScript API. There are instances where I've linked various places where it would come in very handy within the thread. So yeah, just kind of opening it up to the floor here. What does everyone think about adding the ability to have internal modules?
And just to be clear, none of this takes existing pseudo internal modules that are actually publicly accessible and makes them unaccessible, right?
Correct. That is a separate operation.
However, I think that would be a really good thing to do in a major version bump. Like, people shouldn't be requiring util._extend, but it would we wouldn't change that in a patch release. But it would be a good thing to change in a major release.
We would break way too many modules if we.
No, util_extend is actually, we should, if anything, we should just like remove the underscore because that is so publicly used. But there's a lot of other internal things we probably shouldn't be exposing.
So the example of a place where I would really like to have the ability to have internal modules is I linked it up and had to browse through the large thread for this, but inside of Readable Stream, there is a place where we have to basically our event emitter that we're attaching to the destination stream during a pipe has to take precedence. And this came up, I think Brian White, MSCDX, was optimizing event emitters, but because of the internal implementation of how he was changing how the internal implementation of event emitters worked, but that knowledge had to change in streams as well, and just having the ability to like have a private priority add listener, something like that, would be super handy, so we don't have to like reach into internals of other classes. We could actually do this in a kind of clean way. Ben asks, how will the test suite test internal functions from then on? There would be a flag or an environment variable, or both, to basically make the internal modules, a -- allow internal modules to make them available from all of Node. So, io.js.
I like it.
I like it too. The only concern I have is, there's all these people like Strongloop, for example, and also New Relic who build monitoring capabilities by doing monkey patching. Would that still be like even remotely possible if we internalize a lot of those things?
I think they should still be able to monkey patch the public APIs. From what I understand, what they're doing, they're basically lightly shimming like the inputs and outputs of them. They shouldn't need to reach into, for example, like pipe and change how it's adding event emitters.
Well, that's not quite true. There are cases where it is useful to really reach in there and change how it works fundamentally. But okay, let's table that discussion for now.
I think the biggest motivator for having internal modules was that we would be able to require something, add a module that you could require, but it would not be exposed to user code. I thought that was basically the idea.
Yeah, and to me this seems pretty straightforward of a win, because basically right now if you want to keep something private, you just have to put it in a giant ever-growing file, right? And now you're saying that, oh, now we can actually just use another file and use internal require. It's just a developer cleanliness thing.
So it seems like the consensus on this for now is to kind of think on it more, comment on the thread. Isaac brings up that it might be a bigger change than it seems like at first. So I'm happy to put it back on GitHub and talk about it there. Just to get it out in front of the TC is nice. Yeah.
Okay, and then we're almost done actually. So I only put this URL module thing on here because it doesn't have a place to land yet, because we don't have this thread about the major version. So that will also go there. So we already pretty much covered that. Chris is gonna go and write an issue about that. Ship WebSockets and core. Bert.
Yeah, I brought that up. Actually, I'm not quite sure I want it anymore. Because people made some good comments in the thread. My thinking was that since WebSockets is a very well supported browser API, which builds on top of HTTP, and we support HTTP, why not support WebSockets? And one of the reasons I want it is because building native add-ons is just so terrible, especially for me as a Windows user. But I think what many people pointed out is, well, basically all the compile bits do is do some ORing or something on buffers. Actually, if we did want to add it to core, we could actually get away with just adding that part, as maybe a secret buffer method or something.
Sorry, can you repeat that? What would be added?
Some method that masks a buffer basically with one value or masks two buffers.
There are three. So it's buffer mask, buffer unmask, which does a XOR of one int32 value against the entire thing and partially unrolls the loop. And there's also validate UTF-8. So it's basically having a method for a buffer that says, is this buffer valid UTF-8?
Oh yes. Well, okay. So I mean, actually, all those things sound not super hurtful or even useful to add them to our buffer.
Yeah, all those sound like great features. Can we just get those into buffer?
Yeah, maybe that's the way to go forward, and then we don't have to solve this problem. I think there is another discussion here though, which is like, are we Node at some point in its lifetime was really modern. It supported, people built the first speedy prototypes and stuff in Node actually because it was so easy to get it done. But now, I mean, browsers already support HTTP2, but in Node there is no sign of even reaching consensus that we would like to support HTTP2, if you know what I mean.
No. There's a huge thread about HTTP2, and it's not. I mean, everybody wants to do something. It's just unclear what to do. But like, people do want to do HTTP2.
Okay.
I think we do need to have this kind of we want to keep the modern, and I think part of it is that we've all kind of recognized over the last few years that having these things developed in user land is really nice and has a lot of benefits that come with it, and we're all like trying to keep core small. But I think that we just need to step back a little bit and say, even if that's our development methodology, there are some things that should be official and probably ship with the box. I mean, maybe you need to run npm install once, but maybe they should ship with it. And I think if you really want to be like a cohesive platform, maybe we develop WebSockets in some other repo and not in core, but it needs to be official. Otherwise, Node is just like, oh, they support HTTP.
As far as HTTP2 goes, like I'm fine including the functionality in the core, but I like how we have HTTP parser built externally and then we hook into it. I think that should also be done with HTTP2.
Is there a reason why HTTP2 can't be pure JavaScript?
Well, aside from performance reasons, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if HTTP parser is that performant, and hey, I wrote most of it, so...
It's gone through several revisions of performance with Fedora. It's freaking fast now.
Yeah, okay, so HTTP parser itself presumably is, or at least it's not terrible, but you still have to go through many layers of JavaScript, then C++.
Oh, yeah, okay, Node's implementation is horrendous, right? It does not near take advantage of the performance that HTTP parser, the C library, offers. Granted, but still, at least the availability is there in case we ever want to go back and make it faster.
When you land index of, I'm going to write a pure JS parser and we'll see which one is faster. That'll be a good test, right? Because it sucks to write that parser in pure JavaScript without buffer.index of. But once it's there, then we can see how big that penalty really is talking to the C layer. Okay, anyway, I think we're at somewhat of an impasse. So
I think in terms of takeaways from this, I think maybe we should start an issue, either maybe just an NG about the strategy of the core set of modules and expanding those while also keeping things in JavaScript or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the main concern that I have with offering an HTTP2 API is that it would also need to support HTTP1 kind of transparently, and then you have to make a decision about whether or not you're going to expose new features, and are they only going to work if they have HTTP2, or are you going to backfill them some way, the way that Socket.io does, and how crazy abstract is this going to get before it's actually useful?
And so I think that comes down.
That's a long conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to kind of the lessons we've learned over the last few years. We should build it in user land first, and then once we think it's a reasonable API, then we put it in core.
I agree with Dominic here. So yes, so I think as a TC, all we would need to say more or less is, we would like to support HTTP2, and we would consider putting something in core, but there needs to be something in user land first. So and then maybe if there's people that are interested, they can form a working group together, or they people might compete in four different implementations may come by. Although with promises that didn't done so well, but I think what we basically have to do is just say the word. Okay, we eventually would like to support HTTP2. I guess that's what it comes down to. I don't want us to actually start anything right now.
Is there anyone on the TC that would like to work on a HTTP2 module? I mean, a userland module.
I have
not here.
Fyodor already wrote one, didn't he?
Yeah, he wrote a speedy module, but I don't know about HTTP2.
Wasn't it basically the same thing with slight modifications?
I think so, yeah.
I'd be happy to poke at it, but just in JavaScript for the fun of optimization's sake.
Now, a legitimate question: are we going to implement TLS only HTTP2?
Is there
I
any
thought that it
reason?
was TLS only.
It's not.
It's not per official standards because some people in the standards bodies held it up. However, like they strenuously objected. However, no implementation in browsers is going to support non-TLS.
Well, the one reason that we might want to do it though is because I bet if you put a terminator in front of Node for the TLS side, then you're gonna need the pure plain text version, right? So
I think
I
that's
think that we would want to.
really reasonable use case. What Michael's saying, that is super common to do.
Yeah, I mean to be fair, like we don't do TLS that well, and there's a lot of like barriers to us ever getting as fast as some of the terminators. So.
Yes. So I mean, what I eventually imagine sort of comes out of this is like an integrated server that supports, I don't know, HTTP and WebSockets and Start TLS and HTTP2. Sort of, you configure it and set a port, and then it can do any of these protocols. That is a lot out, I know, but that seems more reasonable than what we do currently, where WebSockets is monkey patch on top of HTTP, and then Start TLS is like really hard to get to work. And
I
guess this
agree with
comes
that
back-
sentiment, but I do wonder what the use case for WebSockets will be once HTTP2 is out, because there's no browsers that support WebSockets that aren't on an auto upgrade path. So what slice of the internet is going to have not HTTP2 but WebSockets, and which features?
I think it's better for persistent connections. I don't know for sure, but I think they're actually not overlapping use cases completely by design.
Does IE not support WebSockets nowadays, or is it on an auto upgrade path?
IE 10 and up.
Right. Okay.
So what I guess, yeah, that's an interesting question about like the integrated server and stuff. Like, I guess it comes down to Trevor's architectural concerns, and to me, I think I agree with Trevor in that like the most important thing is just to expose the stuff users don't want to do and don't want to have opinions about, like how to parse an HTTP request body. So like we need to get that shipped somewhere. I don't know about like should we have a server object that supports all three or something like that. That's a little harder.
I think we'll learn a lot about these primitives the more work that we do in this area. But like maybe we should like let's start a conversation in NG, and if it really starts to take off and people are doing a lot of work, then we can figure out where to go from there.
All right. Well, maybe for example, the people from IBM would care to work on this.
So I think there's there's two action items here. There's start a conversation in NG about kind of like all this related stuff, but there's also I think Bert's question of like you guys as the TC should say we do want an HTTP2, and I'm not even sure what the communication channel for that is, but like probably just that issue. But I think that would be a good action item to take away from this conversation.
Yeah, let's get it into the notes, and then we can figure out how to message that like later, I guess.
Well, I think we don't actually have to message that. I mean, we can message it, but the most important part is that if someone asks on the issue tracker, it won't be that person won't get a very confusing answer. If we don't agree, then Colin's gonna say, well, next year, and Trevor will say no, and I will say yes, and that's not really helpful for people. So if we know what we want in the first place, that's already a good start.
Well, so I'm just thinking, like, with promises, I thought it was pretty helpful to the conversation, even though it kept going. When Broad came in and said, came from the CC meeting and said, here's our perspective. If somebody wants to do that in the HTTP2 thread after this meeting, I think that would be pretty cool.
Cool.
Okay. I'll follow up and do that. Okay, so then we already talked about Colin like leaving the TC, so that was already covered. Yeah, I think we're good. We're like out of agenda unless anybody has any like last minute things they want to throw in. Okay, great. I'm really excited for your patch, Trevor, for the buffer.indexOf. I've been waiting for that for years, so I'm very
Well, it still needs to be optimized, but I'm not going to hold up the patch for that optimization.
Yeah, we can just append that statement to like everything you say.
Pretty much, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Closing it down. Goodbye, everybody. See you all next week.
Thanks,
Bye.
all.
Thanks everyone. And
Okay.
Goodbye, everyone.